forget to like and subscribe to Grasshopper and the Bear, our YouTube channel.
With great pleasure that I welcome Sensei Kevin Pereira to the Grasshopper and the Bear today. I'm Xavier, the Grasshopper.
I am Kendrick, the Bear.
Nice to meet you, Kevin. How you doing
Pleasure
today?
to meet you guys. I'm good. I'm really good.
I'll explain to the viewers how we met. We actually met on TikTok a few days ago. I commented on one or two of your posts, and you commented back. I felt, immediately mutual respect and connection, communication as fellow martial artists. I really appreciate that. As you know, you could probably tell. I really like your content. I like your enthusiasm. I'm going to give you a quick intro. So you have studied many martial arts. You have black belts in Seido Karate, Kaishinkai Karate, Kyokushinkai Karate, Endo-Ryu, and you have created actually your own style, which is Shishikan Bujutsu, which, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of these, it translates to Training Hall of the Lions.
Yes.
How did you get started in martial arts? Please tell us on your
Okay,
words.
so first off, I want to say thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure. And there was an instant respect, mutual respect, that it's hard to find that on platforms like YouTube and TikTok, where it's all about videos and it's not really like a super connection like Facebook, where you kind of get to know people. And you tend to see a lot of keyboard warriors. Like every time I get a comment, I'm like, oh, here we go. And I'm assuming the worst. So when I have a nice comment like that, especially from somebody of your caliber, experience, and skill, it means a lot to me. Because sometimes you see these comments and it's just like, I love when they say, prove it. I'm like, well, come to the Bronx and we'll make it work. And they're like, well, I'm not going to do that. Then how you ask me to prove it? No matter what video I show you, there's always going to be something. Oh, but this was the situation and that was the situation. So, but I started in martial arts when I was about 5 years old. I was a super shy kid. I was actually telling my fiance this story recently. There's an armoire that my mother has in her house that it's still there. It used to belong to my grandmother. It's like from the 60s. And when people they used to come over, I used to hide in this little compartment. It was almost like an Eddie Monster kind of deal. So I used to hide in there and wait for like people, even my relatives, to leave because I was just so shy. And my dad was like this known tough guy. And he used to do jujitsu and boxing and stuff like that when he was in the prison system. And he's like, no son of mine is going to be a little, if I excuse my French, a little bitch. Right. He's like, no son of mine is going to be scared of his own shadow. So that's how I got started. Honestly, it was just my dad. And funny enough, today would have been his 84th birthday.
Okay.
So happy birthday to Dad in heaven.
Happy birthday, Mr. Pereira.
Thank you. He was the driving force to always keep me training. And it's funny because I talked to her about that. Like I would get like these little girlfriends, because again, I was 5 when I started. So I'm going to be 40 in December. It's a long time. So I've had these little girlfriends with distractions. And he's like, I paid for 2 years ahead. I paid for a year ahead. You ain't quit it, And he would just find ways to manipulate me mentally to continue to train. And, he was the guy, the cornerstone. So, it all goes back to my dad as being the man, the person that kind of set the path and just continued the path. And every time I do something, he'd low-key celebrate it, but never told me to my face how he felt about it. But he'd always wear like my Shishikan jacket and the Shishikan logos, and he would brag to people. I'd meet people and they're like, oh, you're the karate guy. I'm like, how do you know about that? He's like, your dad always talks about it. So it was really, really cool to find out that even though he wasn't expressing it to me directly, he expressed it to people around him.
My father, he is the one. He was my motivation for getting into martial arts too. I touched on a little bit in some of our DMs. He's Okinawan karate stylist, and he was an instructor as well. And I just wanted to be like him since I was like 7 years old. And he always supported me as well. So I feel you on that, brother. You did your first style was jujitsu. What style of jujitsu was that? And then can you segue into your Seido-Ryu career?
Miyama-Ryu. My grandfather's cousin is actually the founder of Miyama-Ryu system. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's super popular in New York. It's super popular for some reason Dominican Republic, although we're not Dominican, but it's been super popular over there. His name was Antonio Pereira, and he served in the military during World War II. He spent some time actually living with Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido, and he lived at the Kodokan. So his highest rank was he was a 7th dan in judo when he died. And this guy, he basically mixed mashed Aikido, Jiu-Jitsu, and judo. and he had his own system. He came back in the 60s and was teaching Aikido, and he realized that people just weren't with it. They're like, this is Tremont, this is the South Bronx, and people were like, oh, Aikido's bullshit. So he went back and trained even more. Then he came back and altered the system and made me Amaru. So that was the original thing, because it was a family art. I have a couple of uncles and cousins that are like high ranking in that. And then I got into Seido, funny enough, because I saw The Perfect Weapon, and I wanted to do Kempo. So my father didn't want me to do karate because it was like we're a jiu-jitsu family. So he's like, well, if you find a school, then you can join. So I went all over the place. It was a school that was promoting Kempo on like the Bronx public access thing. And I knew it was in Tremont, but I didn't know where. Like it wasn't like one of those uppity, like a little bit more money kind of areas that we have, like Throgs Neck and stuff like that. So I was on the bus. I'm like 12, 13 years old trying to find this place, and I couldn't. And my cousin started training with Nakamura first. So he took me, and I remember I asked him, I said, is this like Perfect Weapon? They're like, yeah, it's the same thing. It's exactly the same shit. I'm like, really? Yeah, it's the same thing. And I'm in class, and I'm like, this doesn't look like what I saw in the movie. And the more research I did on Nakamura, because I was fortunate enough that I actually went to the headquarters of Seido. And I found out like Nakamura is the guy who brought Kyokushin to the States in 1965. Kyokushin, he really made the name for Kyokushin. He was the first North American chairman. He was one of the 3 guys that went to Thailand to do the whole karate versus Muay Thai.
Are you serious? Yeah, I know about that story, of course. For real?
And he was the only guy on his team who won that fight.
Really?
Wow.
And he was middleweight, and he beat the undefeated heavyweight champion. Like he kicked the shit out of this guy. And he was just like this super beast. Like Nakamura was just had this aura around them. And every time I tell people I train with Nakamura, even on here, people were like, oh, bullshit, like on TikTok. And I'm like, I've got pictures with the guy. I'm in one of his books, and I didn't even know I was in his book. I was about 15 in the picture. We were doing like a special class for special needs people. And he just so happened to show up that day. And I was assisting the class. And one of my friends years later was like, bro, did you check out Kaicho's book? I'm like, no. He's like, dude, you're on page 19. I open the page, and I'm there in Cesar sitting down, all skinny me with a little peach fuzz beard, and Nakamura's on the same line. And he had this thing with me where every time we do a lineup, he'd be like, hey, come on. Like he would call me to sit like either near him or in that line. When I got my black belt, I was sitting right next to him in the picture, and he would like move people, like, get out the way. And then I'd be the guy that was always next to him. So when we parted ways, I know he wasn't too happy about that.
Wow.
So Kevin, you trained in several styles, and created your own system. And why did you divert away from Kyokushinkai and went into more of the next art? I guess Endo-Ryu was one of your big motivations for you, or something that inspired you to
Nindo-Ryu,
change your style, or go deeper into your system and your philosophy of martial arts and the practical application of kata, right?
Yeah. Well, it was before Nindo was Ryukyu Kempo, actually. I started training Ryukyu Kempo with Mark Klein. And that was an interesting situation because it was more, I don't want to compare it to like a premier martial arts deal, but I went over there to interview for a job. My son's mother, who I was with at the time, we tried to give it a second shot. Many shots, didn't work. And she's like, if we're going to do this, you got to move to Jersey. Because that's where she's from. I want to be in Jersey. Okay. So I was going from Jersey to New York to do the Seido thing, and just the money wasn't adding up. And I'm like, this is killing me, this trip. So she went on Craigslist and found an ad for an instructor. And she's like, well, there's a school out here that's looking for an instructor. And I'm like, that's foreign to me, because I came up in a super strict, like, first degree black belts weren't even teaching their own classes yet, most of them. Unless you were like exceptional. You were like assisting classes, and assisting classes just standing there doing the punches, and the beginners will follow you, and maybe you take like 4 guys and do maybe like 3 blocks, and that's it. I was super strict traditional. So I'm like, how can somebody just hire a guy? Like, I didn't understand how that worked. So I went to go meet Mark. Awesome guy, right? This little tiny Jewish guy. His strength and his power. He's like 5'6". He's probably about $160. But when he grabs you, he feels like a bear trap. He trained with Wally J.
I was gonna say that I was watching some of your videos this morning, and some of the system that you're demonstrating in a seminar a long time ago it looked like Wally J's small circle jujitsu technique.
Yeah,
too.
I got to train in some of that. But the thing is with Mark couldn't rank in small circle because he was only a first degree. So he was he has an 8th degree in Ruchi Kempo, a first degree in modern Arnis. He trained with Remy Pressas. Remy Pressas actually lived with the guy for a while.
Really? Okay.
And he has a first degree in Arnis. He did a little wing
Founder of
chun and
Arnis,
stuff like
yeah,
that
Remy
too.
Pressas.
So a lot of my trapping drills and all that actually come from Mark. And I, to this day, I give him credit for that. And then with Mark, started training there. And I would ask him, I'm like, but like, what style do you teach? And his attitude was, well, they're little kids. A punch is a punch and a kick is a kick. But that's not the truth. Because the way they punched, they had a 45-degree punch. There were a lot of differences. So what we would do is we would do like 3-hour private classes every morning. And I would just train with them. He would teach me their katas and he'd show me stuff. And he opened my eyes really. And that was the real thing, is really the reason why I left Sado. There was 2 reasons. One, because of the distance and trying to make it work in a relationship. But the second was it became sort of like a cult. If you look into like the Kyokushin Sado group, they're very cultish. They believe that their thing is the only thing, that they're like the bad. They just have this belief system. But the thing that bothered me the most is you're teaching us these kihon waza, these basics, but none of our kumite fighting techniques resemble even remotely anything that you're teaching. Why? And then when I ask too many questions, Nakamura-san would be like, oh, just shut up and do it. And you would literally tell me that, like, just shut up and do it. And I'm like, what? I'm like, this is unrealistic. Like, I would laugh sometimes in class. And I'm like, dude, I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Like, you would get somebody fucking murdered with this shit. Like, come on, man. Like, these knife defenses, I would laugh. And I'm like, bro, there's no way in the world. Like, I can understand this bare knuckle stuff, cool, right? I go with that. But the stuff that you're teaching people for knife defenses, and I would tell them, like, I can help you. And they would get annoyed. And they had this, like, thing, I don't know. I had tattoos, and I remember I started working there. And I would work at the front desk. I would manage the front desk, and I had this thing with my head being shaved. Oh, it's intimidating. You're racially profiling me? Is it because I'm Hispanic? I'm brown, and I have a shaved head and tattoos. It's a problem for me. I'm scary to people. Those are kind of the little things they were saying to me. Is like, you have to change your look. Well, I have tattoos. I can't change that.
Right.
You know? But they wanted me to grow my hair out. These are the certain things they wanted me. They wanted me to be clean shaven. And I'm just like, they're trying to change who I am. Like, this system's supposed to be about love and respect and caring for everyone, no matter the differences, disabilities, or, you know, different, you know, like I said, differences, and you're trying to nitpick me and change me. I didn't like that. So yeah, I started working for Mark and trained under Mark exclusively. So I did the Arnis, the small circle stuff, the Riku Kempo, the Q show stuff. And the way he did his pressure point stuff wasn't like and people would pass out. Like, he'd hit you places and you'd be like, holy shit. Like, you know, I'm telling him, oh, I had all this conditioning. I've been hit places. Isn't gonna do nothing to me. And he would tap me and I'd drop like a sack of potatoes. I'm like, oh shit. And I'm like, how is this guy doing this? Well, he would like, you know, show me your kotegashi. And I would do it. He's like, try it like this. And I'm like, oh, like even my jujitsu, he made better, like leaps and bounds.
Okay.
And from him, I segued into the Nindaru stuff. More so, I was doing training with him and Nindaru because I had met Leon Major, a friend of mine, originally on MySpace, and he would invite me to train. And I see this guy with all these ranks, and in my head, I'm like, how's this even possible? You know what I mean? And then I met the guy, and you see him, he's very unassuming, right? Chunky black dude, looks kind of like a cartoon character with an afro, and you're like, him? And he touched you, and you're like, oh shit. And that little things, like, you know, even myself, I'm not like the epitome, and we'll get into all that epitome of like what people think is like this super badass martial artist. You know, I don't look like freaking anything special. And I started to learn, like, you know, Mark's tiny, doesn't look like nothing, kill you. Leon doesn't look like nothing, kill you. So I would get exposed to more of these people who just really, because the Sado guys were all like super strong and they looked like they could hurt you. You look at them like, yeah, this guy will kill you in a second. But these other guys, like the Okinawan Kempo guys, the Nindo guys, you're like, him? Like in your head, you're like, there's no way, because you're so programmed to thinking like some buff ass Japanese dude. And then you see these guys, you're like, yeah, okay. And then they touch you and you're like, oh. Sensei would tell me, you know, our art is the art of hitting people with the planet. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, let me show you. You know, the ground is your best friend. It's your tag team partner, he would tell me. And he would just show me the sickest throws and locks and transitions. And I'm like, geez, Louise. And I've always been one of those people that wanted to do more. So we would do 5-hour classes on the weekends, right? So we would do like an hour in weapons, an hour in jujitsu, an hour of ground stuff, an hour of Kempo, an hour like that. We would just work so much stuff. And it was just like mind blowing to me. Like, oh my God. And I was always out to learn more. You know, I have other friends that I trained with, but never formally, and just pick up like FMA from those guys, BJJ from other guys. So I have that background, but sometimes people see stuff, oh, I don't ever work against a BJJ guy. But little they know my students are Sambo coaches and BJJ black belts. But they're best friends of mine. Those are people that I cross-train with, but I don't really put too much. I did like 1 or 2 videos recently, but that's it.
I saw you do like a cross choke from the guard or something.
Yeah.
That was a nice move.
Thank you. My student, a really good friend, Carlos Del Valle, he's a Sambo coach, and he's been doing BJJ about 25 years now. And that's like his go-to. Like has videos of him doing it in competition against guys bigger than him. And you look at the video and you're like, why is this guy tapping? And he's like, oh, I had him in a cross choke. It's just he's on top of me. We're so close that when I choked him, he was like, it looks like he's getting dominated. And we would focus more on techniques like that when we do the ground stuff. If we're going to be competition, to make it look weak. Oh, we're weak. We're nothing. Good night. So yeah, I mean, I've just been one of those people that every time I see something that catches my eye, I want to learn. Oh, I like that. Show me how to do that. I like that. Like even my roommate, he's a kickboxing champion and an MMA champion, and also a jiu-jitsu black belt.
Black belt, right?
And we cross train all the time. His name is Ivan Maestre. We cross train all the time. So I'm just one of those guys that show me that. I want to see that. And then I think of a way that I can either relate it to karate, relate it to a kata, how it works the same, or how I can like not so much improve on it, but make it my own.
Kevin, in terms of your dad, man, it just, and Javier tell you this as well, man, it warms my heart when I hear about just that connection, the legacy, oftentimes, in my opinion, in my experience, and I think that all of us can attest to this, there's a lot of emphasis on the mother role and how that's important, which it is, but it's something about the legacy. And maybe because I'm a man that I just connect with when I hear, like what Javi would tell me about how his father was his hero and how his father instilled those things in him. And then to listen to you pretty much say the same thing about how, he was the motivation and how he would do things to get you to train, and he signed you up so far in advance. And I just love that, man. And I salute you for that, for being that and doing that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And your humility as well is something that I caught. And that's a blessing as well, because unfortunately, anybody that gets good at something, whatever it is, there's that possibility. And within the realm of martial arts, anything where somebody is great, or there's that greatness, there's that possibility of that arrogance or that lack of humility. But to hear you and I just get that vibe, man. So it's a pleasure to be able to talk with you. You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be able to have the conversation with you and to just hear about what hear some of your story.
Thank you so much.
Spoke about your son. Do you, how many children do you have, and have you trained all of your children in martial arts?
I have one biological son, and then I have stepchildren. But my son, funny, he's a funny story, and I'm gonna tell you why. I started training him when he was 3, and his first gi was a gift from Tadashi Nakamura. Funny enough. So the first gi he ever had was a gift from Nakamura.
That's cool, man.
That's cool. The evil person herself, I won't talk too much about her because she might see this interview, threw it out. She eventually threw it out. Been there, man. I won't even get into all that. But yeah. So he started training when he was 3 with me. Okay. Then when I said to myself, you know what? I don't want to be the guy that like ranks him, because like, oh yeah, he just gave his kid a belt to give his kid a belt. So I brought him into the school. I'd asked Mark, I'm like, hey, is it okay if he trains here? So he's like, yeah, sure, of course. So the problem was he'd be like, daddy on the mat. Daddy. I'm like, no, not daddy. I'm sensei here. Sensei daddy. Sure. No. So I'd have my friends train him. I have a friend, Eric Wong, and another one that I used to have him train. I'm like, can you guys do the class when my son's in class? Because it's not going to work out. People are like, he's your kid. And they would look at his face. My son's very light complected, but he looks, you can tell. You can pick him out in the crowd. That's your kid. So to avoid any, nepotism or preconceived nepotism, I let other people train him.
Okay.
Because I was very hard on him. And I think that's kind of what got him to steer away from it. I would like dig into him, like, dude, you're supposed to know this, and smack him upside his head kind of thing. And I think I was a little bit too rough.
Okay.
Yeah, so he got like their version of a junior black belt through them. And then he got one through me eventually.
Okay.
Once my system got sanctioned and everything like that through Japan and some world councils. And then he started training at a place called the Daddis Fight Camp in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And he did BJJ for a while, for like, from when he was 10 to when he was about 14. And then one day he just stopped. He's like, I want basketball. I want to focus on that. Because he's tall. My son's 6'3". I'm only like 5'9".
Oh, wow.
His son's got the genes from that side. So he's 6'3".
Okay.
He's like, I want to focus on basketball. I'm like, brother, you got a football body. Play football. You want to play basketball. He played, was nothing spectacular. Then he got on the football field and started crushing everybody. I'm like, I told you. But yeah, that's what kind of like stirred him away. And then every now and then I'm like, hey, let's do trapping hands. Let's do this. Let's do this drill. He still remembers them, but he doesn't train them like religiously. And sometimes my students are like, dude, do you know who your dad is? Like, I don't like to talk about myself, but they'll do it. They're like, dude, if that was my dad, I'd be like on him, like right on rice, trying to learn something.
Right.
And he would tell me, yeah, we're going to train again. Now he works a full-time job. He just finished his first year of college. He's got a little girlfriend now, so
congratulations.
he doesn't have time for dad.
Right, bro.
But my stepson actually trains, and my fiance, we all train. Like they train, they take the classes and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. And that was something he wanted to do on his own. Like I didn't have to force it. I wanted it. And I'm like, I'm gonna get one of these kids to be like a badass. Which one is it gonna be? And I thought it was gonna be. Honestly, I still think it's gonna be the girl. But he wanted to train, so he's been training.
Okay. Does your daughter have any interest that you can tell in terms of wanting to train? Do you see that little twinkle, or you think it's
well?
gonna
The
take a long
funny
time?
thing is, I had gave her this tactical pen that one of my students, because I have a student named John Greco. This guy's got 47 years experience in the martial arts. He's half Japanese. He's lived in Japan, trained Kyokushin in the Hambu dojo over there. He has like a 7th dan and USA Goju, but he's humble enough to train under me, which I find to be a blessing. Every time I see this guy, he has a gift for me. So one of the gifts was a tactical pen. So one day we wanted to send it to the store, and our brother didn't want to go with her. And I was like, oh, my kid, I'm going to get hurt. I was like, yo, take this pen. What happens is if somebody bothers you, you flash the light on their eye, and then you turn it around and stab them in the neck. So she carries around a little pen with her. She's like, I'm going to use it on somebody one of these days. But like, you can see the sparkle in the eye with the concept of I'm going to blind you with the flashlight and stab you in your neck. So
I like that.
I'm very like, the stuff I teach sometimes isn't so PG. That's why I don't like teaching little kids no more. Because I'm just rough. And I'll say things like, you're going to stab them in the neck, you're going to stab them in the eye. Because the reality of the situation is the idea is for self-protection, right? It's ugly, it's brutal. So I try to teach anyone who's around me as much as I can. Even my white belts are doing like toifa. We call it tonfa toifa because it's Okinawan pronunciation. They do knife work. They do stick drills. They do all the weapons. They do empty hand stuff. We do ground stuff, standing up, locking, strikes. So even as a beginner, you're learning all this stuff. You know, I've had guys, corrections officers, take 2 classes and like, hey, Sensei, I did this thing we did the other day. What the? Remember that technique we did, the umbrella? Because we actually do a lot of, I do a lot of improvised weaponry. Debit cards, umbrellas, you name it, scarves. I can teach you how to.
Everything's a weapon. Everything's a weapon, you said in your videos.
So, I mean, I would teach somebody how to kill somebody with a tampon. So, I mean, he's like, listen, one of the inmates got stupid. You know, God rest his soul, he passed away a few months ago, but he was a corrections officer in Rikers. And he ended up like having to use it on somebody. And I'm like, that's cool. Like hearing stories, like, you know, you don't want to promote the violence, but I mean, if you have to defend yourself, I worked with a lot of like bouncers and stuff like that. So I would see it. I got invited to one of my students' club. He was bouncing at the club. He's like, you know, come check us out. And I literally seen him take out 3 guys by himself. No joke. Like the guy wasn't even, he's like 5'10", 190. He took out 3 guys by himself. He's calling for backup. And by the time they came, he was already on the floor, like in blocks and all beat up. And I'm like, damn. And I'm across the thing, watching him. And I'm like, damn, okay. He was only a yellow belt. He only been with me like a year. So it's just like, it's heartwarming when you see people putting it to use. You know, we do a lot of pressure testing where I'll blindfold the guys and we'll be seated and guys will just grab them. How do you react? What do you do? You know? So I'm expecting to see some kind of a strike or, you know, we do a lot of position recognition. If you know the hand is here, where will his groin be in relation? Where will his eyes be in relation? His ears, his hair, his lip, his nose. So you can fish hook somebody, pull their hair, put a finger in their eye, things like that. I know I went off topic, but yeah.
That's all good. It's all good. No, it's all good. Your stepson, now how long has he been training for?
Oh, he just started maybe like 3 months now.
Okay. Do you now, would you say that the way that you teach, the way that you train your students, is there something about the way that you do it or the methodology that you employ that makes them absorb it as quickly as they do? Like you're talking about the yellow belt that took out 3 guys. I guess some people have a natural aptitude for things, be it sports or whatever it is. Would you say that a part of it is some of your people that you train have an aptitude for the martial arts more so, or would you say that it is just how it is that you teach in your classes that helps them to absorb it the way that they do it as quickly?
I think, and I've actually had reviews, funny enough, some of my students put reviews on my little Yelp thing years ago. I think it's the way I come across. They call me the analogy guy. I make analogies for everything. When we do a throw, I'm like, oh, it's like putting on a seatbelt. If I'm doing a technique, a movement, like brushing your teeth, like tying your shoe, this movement you make when you stir a pot. So I'm always trying to relate the martial arts to everything that is a normal movement. Because for me, it is. And I see everyday movements. For example, there's a bow they do in Kyokushin, right? Where we're here and we just go like that. Today, we were doing a back exercise on the cable machine. And squeeze the back, squeeze the rear delts. People are like, that's interesting. I never seen that before. I'm like, yeah, that's from karate. That's the Kyokushin bow. They're like, what? So I would find ways to incorporate the karate and those drills and all that stuff into my workouts. So and also everyday life. So I tell people, this movement, when we do this, it's like that. Oh, I didn't think of that, or I would teach some stuff with the toifa spins. Okay, grab a pen or grab an umbrella, or even you have one of these and you have that same hook and spin, whap, it works the same way. So it starts to, I don't want to break her eye watch, but nunchaku. You take off your watch and you spin it the right way, you crack somebody in the side of the face,
take them out of the watch.
This is an object you can replace. But if you're in a situation where you might get raped, hurt, killed, this will save your ass. You know what I'm saying? So I look at things like that. I try to give them things like, this works like nunchaku. How? This is how. A debit card can work like a tanto, a blade. The FMA drills, the same hooking and passing you can do it with a debit card. Oh, crap. The same thing with the keys. It works the same. So I try to relate everything together and not just in terms of speech. I literally have them do drills like that. Like, I'm like, okay, who's got an umbrella in class today? Well, I'll write to them, bring your umbrellas for class. Or bring a hat, a scarf. And they're like, what? What are you talking about? And then we'd run drills like that. Like that was the big thing we did. And when I did the testing employed all of that. So part of the test is they would have to use, I would say whatever weapon, like I would say, okay, umbrella, show me 5 techniques. All right, grab this person. How do you get out of this with an umbrella? This person will throw a hook punch. This person has a knife. How do you get out of this situation with a rolled up newspaper magazine, with a book, with a water bottle? And they have to kind of think on their toes. So since I'm giving them so much kind of molded teaching, but free teaching, if that makes sense. So it's like you give them a box, but the box is so big that they have room to run around in the box. They're still within those guidelines, but they have the option to pick and choose, those Lego pieces to put together their art. Because at the end of the day, we're not robots, right? We're martial artists. And that is about giving them a tool to create and make something beautiful.
Okay, sounds good.
Kevin, the YouTubers boxing. What do you, as a traditional martial artist, what do you think of all this goes, the pros and the cons? For example, the pros of combat sports and boxing gaining popularity right now, YouTubers, boxing and challenging boxers, MMA fighters, I think it gets more traction on the sport and more people find out about it and may actually start training in these sports. The negative is the lines I feel like people cross in terms of promoting the fights, the YouTubers, and even the MMA fighters and the boxers. People draw the lines in terms of disrespect just to promote the fight. I think it sends the wrong message. I know there has to be some excitement, but I feel like there's certain to build up the fight. But I think it sends the wrong message when people get too negative. What are your thoughts being a traditional martial artist on these types of things?
This similar. I'm a wrestling fan, so when I see the shit talking, that's what I think of, like Hulk Hogan, Jake the Snake.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for me, the martial arts should begin and end always with respect, and they are very lacking in that. Like you said, it has to create some kind of excitement, but at the same time, like for example, De La Hoya's fighting what's his name?
Vitor Belfort.
Vitor Belfort. He hasn't really talked shit about Vitor. He's like, dude, what have I gotten into myself? That I'm getting myself into. So he's kind of complimenting him and making it interesting because you're like, he even knows he's kind of in over his head. Like, damn, this dude's big, he's strong, he's probably on TRT still. So it's like, okay, what's gonna happen? But he doesn't make it disrespectful. So there's ways to do that. Like I remember when De La Hoya fought, I think his name was Mayorga, that he was talking so much shit about his wife and all this other stuff. That stuff is crossing lines. You know, sometimes people do it online. Like some dude made some comment on TikTok and he made some comment about my mom. And I'm like, dude, really? Like, I'm like, where are you? He's like, Washington. I'm like, what's funny is my boy lives 30 minutes from me. So I have two options. I can send him or I can fly over there and fuck you up myself. Because there's just certain things you don't say. All of a sudden, oh, I'm so sorry. He didn't realize that I really knew people over there. He looked up sent him my friend's link, who owns a dude, a dojo and a gym. And I'm like, this guy's a killer. Like, I'll send him to whip your ass or I'll go do it. So it's like, even online, people have the bravado to run their mouth. And that's the one thing I do think that's a con about a lot of the MMA stuff, is that these dudes train on things for like 6 months here, 6 months there, and they think they have the answer. And they think because they have a little bit of experience that they can step to somebody that they assume doesn't know stuff about their world because they have on a gi and a belt and they're not on the floor. So it's like, you don't know my history. You don't know who I am. You don't know where I've been. You don't know what I've done. But it's so comfortable for you to run your mouth via the internet because you know I can't reach through the screen and snatch you by your neck. So those are like some of the thing I think is a con, is that a lot of these schools are just teaching you so much about competition, that they're not teaching the students about respect. And I think it should always end. You know, even if it's a no-gi situation or just a competition school, there still should be sportsmanship, respect, you know. Like actually I saw a fight that you did when you knocked the dude out. You didn't celebrate. You went and checked on him. And that was one of the things I noticed right away. I was like, he just checked on his opponent, knocked the shit out of him. Even though the guy was showboating and acting like a jerk, you still checked on him. That's
why I do that? You know why I do that, Kevin? Because when I was, I did that at all of my fights, like my Muay Thai fights, kickboxing fights, MMA fights. Whenever I knocked the guy out, I would always go and check on him or try to make him feel better, just show respect, you know, raise his hand. Even my mom asked me, why do you do that? Don't do that. Don't raise their hand after you knock them out, you know? And I would tell her, tell you guys right now, when I was bullied in my, you know, youth and even in my teens, you know, people had no mercy on me, man. You know, I got knocked out before in the street. I got pummeled, and those guys, whoever did it, they had no mercy on me. So I always said, once I became a fighter, a good fight, a decent fighter, and became what you call tough, which I wasn't before I got into fighting. I said, I'm never gonna not show mercy to someone if I beat them or knock them out.
What I do respect is that they get in there and do it, because it's not an easy thing to do. The training, all the stuff they go through is not easy. It's just like going for a bodybuilding competition. You know, the diet changes, your life changes, your schedule changes. You know, if you're in a fight camp, you're not going to party and hang out with your friends. And if there's a birthday party, you ain't eating that cake. You're not drinking that cerveza. You're strict on your thing. Those are the things I respect, and those are some of the pros. Is that it's teaching people to be disciplined. But the con is a lot of these dudes are super disrespectful. I had a guy, if I could tell a quick story, talking so much. I mean, the thing about it is, you've seen my content. I don't invite people to say, I just post. I don't say this is the best technique. You know, some of it's just like montages of what I taught in Zoom. And because we converted to Zoom, we used to like do stuff in person, but because of pandemic, lost the space. Yeah. So on and so forth. So we do monthly gatherings, and we train for 4 hours every month. But we train once a month. But then we train every day on Zoom. So we start to put it to action and do all the grappling and touching in person. That sounded weird. You know what I mean? So this guy starts talking hella crap on my video. And I wasn't even doing anything crazy. I was just demonstrating size. Or I choke you out in a second. That's bullshit. You're fucking whack. You're this, you're that. And I'm like,
Oh no.
I said, let me ask you a question. What did I do to provoke this? And he's like, oh, you suck. You're this. And, you know, you're putting out there these videos and people think this is martial arts. Yeah, you're not choking nobody. You're not doing nothing. You don't know where I've been. You don't know what I've done. You don't know that I've done a little judo. You don't know that I've done some video. You don't know what I've done. You don't know me. But I'm like, this guy's crazy. So he's running his mouth. And he's like, you're in the Bronx, right? I'm like, yeah, I am. Now I'm in Southern Boulevard. Let's meet up. I'm going to fucking choke you out and embarrass you, old man. So right away, I'm like, this is a teenager. I said, you're in the Bronx? He goes, yeah. I'm like, you train in the Bronx? Yeah, I do. I said, who's your coach? I've known this coach for 20 years. Guess who's not in that dojo anymore?
Wow.
Yeah.
You knew his coach?
I said, bro, yeah, I knew his coach.
What
And now he told me his
what
coach's
type of
name.
school
And I
or
showed
style
him the
was it?
screenshots. And just from the screenshots, he knew who it was. Because there was no picture. There was no content. But he got the vibe. He's like, I know who it is. Because I could tell the way he's talking. He's running his mouth. I know who he is. And he's been training for like 2 years. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah.
You
And what's
think
funny is
someone
I used to
does-
go over there and do like workshops for the guy. Like he would have me come in and do
Small
stuff.
world.
So it was so funny. I'm like, this dude's running his mouth but doesn't know who I am. But I hadn't
Right.
been there in a while because I had cancer. It was a whole thing. So I hadn't been there in a stretch. So he's talking all this crap about me. And in my head, I'm like, he doesn't realize I know who his coach is. Like I've been doing this. It's going to be 35 years in December. I know a lot of people. Thank you.
Nice.
That makes me laugh.
You're
I'm like, I know a lot of people, dude. Like, even if you don't see me doing these competitions, I used to do all the competition stuff when I was younger. Like, you know, when I was a teenager and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, I just kind of changed my mindset for just my own personal thing with the combative stuff because I felt like you fight like you train, right? So if I'm training to exchange, and this is nothing against the exchanging stuff, but like if I'm fighting to exchange and step back to exchange and step back, or like Kyokushin, you sit there and you get punched. If somebody has a knife and it's in their hand and it's small, and I'm so used to taking shots, I'm thinking I'm eating a punch and I just got stabbed in the chest or in the stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought that up to them one day. I'm like, don't you think that's a little counterproductive since you guys be moving and using Tai Sabaki body movement? So I changed my whole thing. I see something shiny. I see an arm coming to me, Tai Sabaki. Boom, boom, boom. Hit him in the throat. Bye. So just kind of like, I wanted to train more for combatives. And I've been blessed that I've actually taught somebody from every branch of the military. I've taught Marines,
Wow.
Navy, it's Air Force guys, which is kind of cool to say that I've done that. But like, I just changed my gear towards combatives. Like I'm just like this, the karate, that especially now. I met my teacher back in 2009. The guy, because I actually do have an instructor. And it's like, you know, he was talking about the humility. The one thing that keeps me that way is I have what we call a papa. I have somebody above me, and he's quick to be like, yeah, that's good, but your elbow's a little bit too, or your feet are 2 degrees off. Like, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's super critical. I sent him a video one time of me doing a kata in Puerto Rico when I went on vacation. I'm like, yeah, the sunset is cool. He literally screenshotted it, circled, your arm is 2 inches to the right. It should be a little bit more.
It's humbling.
I'm like,
It's
is this
humbling
too
when you have a
serious right now?
coach, you know? It's humbling.
Yeah, so it's nice to have
Wow.
that guy that kind of humbles you a little bit.
Sure,
And, yeah,
sure.
And that's the way he is. And he's super critical. Like I had a group of guys go up for because he makes people test for white belt. And they're my guys, but they're doing my stuff and they're training in Goju-Ryu with him as well. They bounce between the two of us, but they're also doing the Shishiru stuff. And he literally failed 3 of them.
Wow.
Just on hesitation alone, because they took too long to give him an answer. Because he didn't like one of the answers, the way the answers were worded. Like he failed them. I was like, holy shit.
Wow.
And they felt so horrible about it. I'm like, listen, man, he's critical. I even showed him the conversation about the Puerto Rico thing. I mean, he's even critical of me, and I've been doing this for God knows how long. You know what I mean? And it's good to have that, to have somebody to keep you grounded. To be like,
Absolutely.
no, Papa, it's not what you think it is.
Mm.
All right, I finally found someone that is enthusiastic about martial arts and martial arts training theory and the history, more importantly, of martial arts, as I am. Because in Kevin, so I don't practice karate anymore and these other styles, but I am to me, everything is intertwined. Everything comes from similar place. And you can see, you know, karate and kung fu in MMA and vice versa, jujitsu, everything, different people's interpretations and different the way they train. So I have appreciation for, not just all the martial arts, but also all the practitioners such as yourself, and also for the history. How did you get so into the history, Kevin? It's historical history too. Martial arts history goes into historical history of how, you know, kingdoms were made and things of that nature. How'd you get so into that?
It goes back to the Sato thing actually, because Nakamura had such a name, right? But I didn't know why. And I'm like,
he trained with Masayama? Is that
he trained directly under Masayama. He was on Masayama before it was called Kyokushin. That's a fun fact. They used to train in Masayama's garage.
That's dope.
So he started with him when he was 11 years old. He used to do Goju-Ryu with Miyagi Choden's oldest son, funny enough, when he was 9 until he was about almost 11, like 10 and a half. And then his family moved to another part of Japan. And that's how he got into Kyokushin. And because of that, you know, I had to take pride in that, because the thing is, people be like, yeah, I studied karate. I did karate. But what kind of karate? I don't know what's karate. What? Like, that was just silly to me. I'm like, well, I do this, and this is my teacher. And they'd be like, okay, you know, and their teacher would be like some Tom, Dick, and Harry from down the street. I'm like, yeah, my teacher's Tadashi Nakamura. Like, to me, that was like, oh shit. You know, people are like,
yeah,
okay, he's Japanese, so that sounds cool, but they didn't know what it meant. And to me, it was almost insulting that you didn't know your own history. It was just, it's kind of like, you know, cultural history. People don't know, you know, like what part of Puerto Rico they're from, or things like that blows my mind. I'm like, oh, you Puerto Rican? Yeah, what part? I don't know. Have you ever been to Puerto Rico? No. And I'm like, what? Like, I know both my parents were born in Ponce. That's why the dojo is called what it's called. Both my parents are Leos, and they're both from a city called, from Ponce, and it's called the City of Lions, because every city in Puerto Rico has a mascot. Their mascot's a lion. They're actually the basketball team of the Lions. So because both my parents are Leos, and they're both from the City of Lions, I'm into Superman, the House of El, so the House of Lions. So I named it after them.
Oh, man.
So that's why the school is called that. So it's the lion style. But yeah, like, to me, it just made no sense. And then the more you get into the history, you start learning more about lineage. And then once you more learn about lineage, you start to understand who has more connection to the intent. Because the thing that interested me was kata. I always loved kata. And some of my friends from the back in the day would tell me, oh, you've always been a good kata man. You're a good fighter, but you've always been a really great kata man, a technique guy. And I'm like, oh, thanks, you know, I guess. But for me, it was like, where does this kata come from? And then how come that style has the same kata or same name, but they do it different? Why? Why are these things different? Is it because, and you start to learn, is it because it's the teacher's interpretation, or is it because they're missing a piece? And that was one of the things that my teacher now really got me into, is because he lives in Okinawa. He's a foreigner, but he lives in Okinawa. He's lived in Okinawa over 20 years. He's a Navy vet, and he's a cryptologist. So he speaks 9 languages fluently. His wife is Okinawan. Like, you know, he's married into a very big martial arts family over there. So it's pretty cool. It's the Kojos, because they have a style called Kojo-Ryu, and it's literally the oldest style in Okinawa. So he studied the Kojo-Ryu and the Goju-Ryu and all that stuff. And he would tell you, like, you know, this is why these people do the kata different. This is why this group does it this way. And you're like, oh shit, that's interesting. You know, you're like, oh, you know, you would think it's because it was an interpretation, but sometimes what it is, it's a game of telephone, right? I trained with this guy, and then this guy leaves to college. Now he takes a friend that says, hey, I want to learn karate. So he just picks up a student, right? But he's going to teach his friend what he remembers. But he was only training with me for a year. So how much does he really know? So then over time, it gets watered down. And you're like, oh, because then when you see the people that are on island doing certain material, he's like, all Goju-Ryus in schools in Okinawa do it like this. And then you start seeing videos and you're like, yeah, he's right. They do. But then once it gets to the States, it's completely different. Why? Because the guy that was a GI or whoever was training was only there for a year. But he came back with some blown up title, right? Because they wanted a representative in the States. So he's a guy who's only trained for a year, but now they gave him a black belt so he could pick up students and spread the art. But now it's a false representation because he's not really a black belt. He's only been training for a year. So those are the things that really interest me, like who's who really knows what. And you would see it. There's guys now that they claim all kinds of crazy rank, and you ask them questions, they don't know their ass from their elbow. And you're like, yeah, this guy, he doesn't know. Oh, you see somebody hold a weapon, you're like, it's not that it's their interpretation. They're not holding it right. You're like, dude, yeah, your finger shouldn't be there. But you don't tell them that, you just think it. You know, if it's a friend of mine, sometimes I'll inbox them. Hey, when you hold that, you know, your thumb should be here, not there, because this is why. Oh, some people get upset. You know, oh, you think you're a know-it-all. No, it's just reality. Let me show you why. Come take a class. We'll meet up. I'll teach you. Some people take me up on that offer. And I'm not trying to make a buck. I'm trying to help people. Some people take me up on that offer. Some people don't. You know, sometimes I do like group Zoom classes. The last one I had was like 2 months ago. I had about 35 people. I had people from Brazil,
nice.
Ecuador, South Africa, Germany, Australia. I even had a group of Australians that I used to teach during the pandemic at 6 a.m. The whole entire time that, because I had lost my job for a little while. So I was teaching them in the morning, and I had like 8 Australians, and 2 of them were actually Aikido teachers. And they came and took the class, and I would teach them Sai, Bo, Nunchaku, Kama. And it was cool because I'm like, I've got an international presence, and that's pretty awesome thanks to Zoom. So COVID kind of did me a favor.
Kevin,
Nice.
everything you just talked about the last 5 minutes, my father, rest in peace, 5th degree black belt Shorin Ryu, he was very particular to Kobudo. He had a talent for Kobudo. He was, you know, magic with the tunfa, with the sai. That was his talent besides the empty hand. He researched and was so into the history of each move in the kata. He would tell me about it. I wasn't so into it, but I just loved engaging my dad in martial arts, no matter what it was. But he would say, hey, look, check this out, Javier. And he'd be like, look, there's a throw in this kata here. This is a takedown. This is an arm break. He was so into that research, just like you're describing. So it really trips me out to hear you talk about it, because that was his interest too, where all the moves of the katas and who made the kata, who carried it on, and it's fascinating, man. I just gotta throw that in there.
Right. Well, God rest his soul. And it's cool because it really is interesting because, for example, my teacher, the line that we have to the founder of Goju is super short. So it's like my teacher, his teacher, the founder. Like that's how close it is to the founder of Goju-Ryu. And Goju-Ryu is an art that's practiced all over the world. And so not many people have that connection. So I get to train sometimes from virtually. I'm actually supposed to be going to Okinawa later this year.
Oh, wow. That's dope.
You know, we had to train virtually with Toyama Zenshu. He's literally the most senior Goju-Ryu practitioner in the entire world. The guy's been training since the 50s. Actually, no, correction, late 40s. This guy is like super badass, super old, and still does his thing, trains every day. Both his kids are super high ranking. His daughter's like a 7th Dan, his son's an 8th Dan.
Living the dream.
And yeah, and it was crazy because the connection's so short. And he's so open about his stories. And said things like, what's great about these guys is they're grandpas. Grandpas love to just run their mouths and tell stories. So sometimes he's like, I'll just go over there and bring Sensei like an omelet. Because for some reason, Okinawan people love American breakfast, but there isn't places to get it over there. So he's like, I'll bring him an omelet from on base because he still works for the military. Bring him an omelet and just sit there for 5 hours listening to talk about stories of Miyagi and Higaseko and, you know, all these guys that he learned from, Tamaki Jui, you know, where he got the kata from. Because he would get a kata from a guy who got it from the guy who brought it from China. Like it was that close of a connection. So when I would see the kata, I'm like, yo, this is the original, like the real version of the kata. And then when Sensei explains it, you're like, holy shit, this stuff is mean. Like there's a side kata, there's a portion of it when a guy throws a round kick and you skewer him through his. How bad can I curse in here?
No, it don't matter. You're good. Whatever you want. Kid.
You're gonna get him in a taint, like between the balls and the ass. The side goes up through there. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, the guy throws a kick and you stab him right there. And if you don't get him there, it's gonna go underneath the thigh anyways with what we call the sume, which is the point of the yoko, the end of the side like that goes like this. Yeah. So he's like, if you get it either way, you just there scrape. And I'm like, damn. Like the more you learn about these weapons, you're like, people think it's a flippy mode weapon. It's not. It's percussive and locking. So the sai has a lot of locking techniques, throws, chokes, because it was a policing tool in China.
Sure.
So there were 3 policing tools they were using in Okinawa. When you first started, they give you what we call a tambo, which looks like the Filipino baston. It was a short stick. Then they give you a toifa, which is a tonfa, and then they will give you a sai as you go up in rank. So the sai obviously is the most dangerous of them all. So the sai is the one they took away, but the other 2 they still use. But the sai, like the crazy techniques behind that, you know, Sensei's teacher was actually a warden for the jails over there. So his sai techniques, like he was a wizard with sai. and he would just like lock people up. There were stories about the mean shit he would do to dudes. Just crazy stuff where you take a guy inside this nerve here and just rip. Like you want to pull that meat out, and just techniques are crazy, like unhinging the jaw. Like the stuff they show you, like you're not getting this in Manhattan, in the Bronx, in Florida. Like this is like real Okinawan. Like you have to really know these guys. He's married into the family, so it's like they show him things that they don't show everybody else. So he's selective about who he teaches it to. People who he considers family, he'll share a little bit more. So these are things that I obviously can't share because they've been given to me secretly. But with my students, you know, I don't put it on the internet. With my students, I share the stuff. It's mean. It's like mean shit. You're like, God, this is what it's supposed to do. He's like, yeah, this is the purpose of this weapon. You know? Same thing with nunchaku. Nunchaku are mean. So when I see these dudes online like spinning them, hey, that's cute. But do you know what?
If you see the video of Kevin doing the nunchaku, bro, you are sweet with the nunchakus, brother.
Thank you.
You are sweet.
Thank you.
Man.
And it's funny. That's like my least practiced weapon. I haven't done nunchaku in like a year.
Bro, you're sweet with the sticks, bro.
What Kevin, what weapons are you proficient with, if you don't mind my asking?
Okay, the katana. I have a first degree in Japanese kenjutsu. So
Nice.
I have a first degree background in swordsmanship. I have a first degree background in 2 styles of kobudo. So one is more of a Japanese hybrid, which is more like an American thing, and then the other one is the Okinawan. I'm actually licensed to teach by the Okinawan Rengokai, Goju-ryu and weapons. So nunchaku, muge, which is kind of like the predecessor to the nunchaku. They look super cool. I wish I had them with me now, but I don't. Toifa, which is a tonfa, kama, bo, so, which is a spear. There's tanto, which is a blade. We have karambit, so the karambit as well. And then there's another weapon that is kind of like it looks like a quill pen, right? You put it in here, the tenshu. You put it in here, and it's supposed to be for dipping ink. But you spin it, you can stab a dude in the eye or the neck. It's pretty cool. And also teko. Teko are like when you ride a horse and you put your feet in there, right? The Okinawan versions have spikes on the end. So what they used to do is they used to kick it into the horse to make the horse run. So they go here, right? And they're kind of like knuckle dusters. And they're spiked, and they have spikes on each end. So you just like knuckle dusting dudes. It's like brass knuckles. So those are like some of the things that I teach and I'm proficient in.
Okay. What would you say, what is the difference between the application of the nunchaku in terms of for the spectators or the demonstration as opposed to the application, the combat or self-defense application of it? If you could explain it for me.
Okay, a lot of folks, this is just from what I've seen, and I've actually had some conversations, and when I ask, I don't mean to be some people take it as me being condescending. Sometimes even when I reply to a comment in TikTok, I'm like, I'm loud and I curse a lot. I'm from the Bronx, it's just the way, and I'm Puerto Rican, so there's like a double, triple threat. I'm gonna curse and be loud. And I don't mean
double
to be
whammy.
aggressive, but sometimes it comes off aggressive. So when I see it, I'm like, it's a lot of flash. People are spinning and throwing and catching, and I'm like, yeah, that. Because if a weapon's coming at me, and this thing is in the air, even for a second, I just lost my lifeline. The nunchaku, right? Nun literally means twin or two in Uchi no Guchi. Chaku is a measurement, basically a way of measurement. So chaku means foot, like literally like 12 inches. So nunchaku means 2 feet. So the 2 feet are connected. So it's twin feet. That's what a nunchaku is. So the concept behind it was to be like a portable bow. So if you take the length of a nunchaku plus the length of a grown man's arm, it should roughly be about 5.5 feet to 6 feet, depending on the type of person. So it's supposed to give you the distance of a bow. If a person has a dangerous weapon and you want to keep them away. So you can use, anytime you do a flailing movement, they're actually strikes. You can strike an arm this way and they come back up and hit them in the face. So you would hit, like, so if I had a knife, you would hit the hand. And then the idea is he's like, fuck, because it's either made out of a really, really hard cherry wood, and mine are octagonal. So each end of it has a spike. Nice. And then some of them are made out of metal. So you hit the guy in his arm, he's like, oh, and he drops the weapon. Now you can hit him in the face.
Sure.
You can do chokes.
Sure.
So there's a lot of choking, throwing, and locking with the nunchaku. You also use the weapon.
Bruce Lee choked Daniel Santo with the nunchaku, right? In Game of Death. I think Bruce Lee choked out Daniel Santo with the nunchaku.
Yeah,
in Game of Death.
with the nunchaku.
That's how he killed him. Yeah, it's like he broke his neck with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool chokes. When you come in here, it's like a cross choke with a gi. You come in here and you step in with your hip and you throw him over your hip while he's tied to the nunchaku. And then you can also do it backwards, so he flies this way, stomach, stomach up. Also, you can use it like a baston. So you can hold both of them together and then hit and then come around, wrap, choke. So you can use it the same way, like a short stick. So it's in fighting, and you can use it for its length if for distance.
Or one hand in each hand and use it as a baston, like in Return of the Dragon.
Yes, exactly. You can use it like a puño, what they call a puño. Yeah, they call it a puño, like the strike. Puño. They literally call it that. So that strike here, a hammer fist tetsui, you use the end of it. So it shouldn't really be held so high. The people who do the spectacle stuff, like it isn't nunchaku, they have it like by the chain. You should really be holding it about 2 finger digits to the bottom. Because this is going to be like your hook. You can hook with it. Some people will hold it here. It's a little bit too high, but you should really be using it for the length of the weapon. Unless you have a reverse grip on it, then you can hold it higher. So when you hold it higher, the chain or the rope should be bottom, and it should be up, so that way you can hit, strike. So those are some of the differences. It's just different movements, and people just don't understand the movements. The same goes for the tonfa. When people see the spins, excuse me, they think it's for like cuteness, like I do a lot of the spinning, but the spinning, or what we call suburi, the flailing, is really supposed to be 1 or 2 things: to create a shield. So if I'm here and I'm spinning, you don't know, okay, how do I get in with this guy? How do I get into that shield? It could be that, or like I said, a deflection. You hit the guy's arm, pop, then you come across his face and you hit him in the throat. Yeah, they're pretty bad. They're pretty badass weapons. I love them.
You unless you were educated like you are, or like Javi is, you wouldn't know that. That's really interesting, entertaining as well. In terms of martial arts, and like, who would you say are your influencers in entertainment? Because I know some certain martial artists that are in film and that are martial artists that could, use the applications for self-defense and fighting. But just for you, who give me, I'll say your top 5.
I'll be honest with you. I really, I don't really see the guys, and I'm like, the only person who really did anything for me as a kid was Jeff Speakman. Like I saw him and I was like, this is different. It's not jumpy kicky like Van Damme. It's not like Steven Seagal used to do. Steven Seagal's handwork was horrible until he got you in a lock. And he always did the same shit, Kotegaeshi, and then he would do the same lock all the time. Jeff Speakman was a guy for me, because I was like, this is different. Because it didn't look showy. It wasn't, it was none of that. It was like, pop, 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 pop. And you're like, what the hell just happened? So for me, it was him. But right now, honestly, nobody. Like my influencers are actual, get on the mat, guys that I respect and I see training all the time. To me, those are guys who are influences to me. Like those are the guys, like my actual friends that I know, people who I respect.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to meet Mr. Speakman at all?
No. And it's funny because I actually studied American Kempo for a little while. I did it for like 2 years.
How long?
2 years.
Okay. I spent a very small amount of time training American Kempo myself. It was really brief, but what it was is I signed a couple of my nephews up for it, and just to kind of encourage them, I took it as well. It was only for a month. It was about 12 years ago, but I was in class. In that month, I was in that class. Because you could train like 7 times a day. They just had the schedule was just extensive, and I trained like almost every day of that month. And when I tell you, I still remember some of those techniques. I mean, exactly that. I mean, in terms of star block set, elbow set, and that's been like 12 years, but it's a testament to just, when you love something, man, and you into it, it just sticks with you. Even like when you were saying with your son, he trained when he was younger, he got away from it for athletic sports, but he could still do some stuff because it was such a part of him when he was coming up. So that's pretty cool. Okay. Yeah.
It's beautiful stuff. The one thing that deterred me from it, I'll be honest, there's always something that I'm like, a lot of the Kempo community, this is just my opinion. I know guys are going to crucify me when they see this. I actually had a good friend of mine unfriend me over this. Because I used to make, I have a thing where I make martial arts memes. There's a guy, Gary Shuley, who does it. And when Gary does it, no one hates him. So I'm like, why is it when I do it, it's a problem? So I had made a meme, right? And do you guys remember? I don't know if I know Javi as a kid. Do you have any children, Kendrick?
I do not. I don't. I don't.
Okay, so you might remember this show. There was a show called Little Einsteins. And like
I
we're
remember
going
that
on
show.
a
I
trip
remember
on a
that,
little,
yeah.
and it was like a science show.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
made
yeah.
a
Mhm.
I remember
meme
that.
where
Yeah.
it was the kids, and they had like a science, like biology problem on the board, and it said
Mhm.
getting ready for my American Kempo test, and everybody got pissed. The problem with me with American Kempo, it was too much theory. It's about marriage of gravity, and it's about deflection of I don't know my balls in the moon, and it was just too much of that. Like, just do the technique. The techniques work. Stop trying to make them scientific. Like, I felt like
Right.
you had to have a degree from MIT
Okay.
to really get into the upper levels. Like, just teach me the
Okay.
material. Like, I
Sure.
like history, right? But the thing about it is, like, the Okinawans are they're island people. So they have very short things for everything, right? So, for example, there's a concept that we call like chinkuchi. Chinkuchi just means locking your body tight on impact. So as soon as you hit something, you lock. Chinkuchi. And in Kempo, it'd be like the deviation of gravity to the moon, to the sky, and the hypotenuse.
Mm.
I'm like,
Okay.
dude, it's Chinkuchi. Like, stop trying to give it some other name.
Right.
You're just
right.
locking your body. But they want to make it like complicated. Same
Okay.
thing we have Uchimi. Uchimi means like sticky hands, like sticking locking techniques.
Mhm.
Kempo, they have some weird, like, oh, it's the falcon feathers. And so that was the thing that turned me off after a while. It was just too much of that. Like if I would post a little video, nothing crazy, like, oh, I just started learning this step. Oh, when you do your gravity, and make sure your pelvis is aligned 45 degrees to the moon. And you're like, come on, dude. Really? Like, I'd rather have that's bullshit, it won't work video, comments, than I have to align my feet to the moon 55 degrees if I'm going to do this correct. Right? There's a guy on TikTok, right? That every time I post something, he talks about magic. He's like, when you do the Kwang Chu Wang, the magic, and I'm like, magic? Okay, David Copperfield. Like, what are you talking about magic? It just doesn't make any sense. So I just feel like when people try to make it too complicated, it just takes away from it. Like, listen,
Okay.
these are the materials, there's theories, and there's concepts, but you don't have to get like so Albert Einstein about it. You don't have to be Stephen Hawking to understand this stuff. And it shouldn't be that way because the layman should get it. If it's too complicated for the guy down the street to really grasp, then there's no point. Because when you're in a fight, you're not thinking about square root of 45 when a punch is coming at you. You're like, I'm going to hit my angle and then keep it moving. Like, I don't know. That's just me. So sometimes
That makes sense.
I fall out of love with stuff. Not with stuff, but just like with groups of people. And
Sure.
I'm like,
Sure.
yeah, I'm going to continue this, but I'm going to do it on my own.
Sure.
Yeah, I would show applications sometimes and people are like, oh yeah, that looks like you stole that from Kempo. And I'm like, Kempo. I'm like, Okinawan karate came way before Kempo. This is Goju. You know what I mean? Like, or this is Shorin, or this is Rukyu Kempo. Like, where do you think he got it from? All I'm doing is an application, my version of an application to an insight, how we could use it to break an arm, right? And then come around and do another movement. So I do a lot of drills that would be like inside block, down block, same hand. So it'd be like punch comes, you hyperextend the elbow and then trap the guy and then hit him. So that kind of thing. And they're like, oh, that's American Kempo. I'm like, no, it's karate, but it's not American Kempo. It's just an inside block, down block. This is how I apply it. Why does it have to be pigeonholed to a title or name?
Sure. You know, what's funny about that is American Kempo is American Kempo karate. So it's like, I mean, karate. I mean, it's a part, karate.
Exactly.
But people
want ownership of things. That's the one thing I tend to understand.
Sure.
Even of students. I've had guys literally ask me to be a part of their organizations and be an instructor in their group so they can claim me and be like, oh yeah, I trained him. No, you didn't. I had a guy do that recently. There's this guy from Puerto Rico. I think he lives in Florida now. And he gave himself some made up title, right? And he gave himself a title that you could only earn from the Emperor of Japan, by the way. And in the history of Okinawa, there's only been 5 people who've been bestowed this title. And this guy hit me up one day, you're an amazing instructor. I was like, thank you. He goes, who are you under? I said, I'm under Scott Mertz and Toyama Zenshu. Why? Are you still with them? Yes. I want you to be an instructor in my worldwide Goju organization. And then I'm looking at him, I'm like, this guy can't even hold a fucking pair side. And he's calling himself a grandmaster. Are you serious? But he wants me to be like the head guy to like train all his people. And I'm like, so basically you want to claim that I'm your student and then you want me to fix everybody that you fucked up. Yeah, that's not working. That's not happening. I told it to my sensei, he laughed. He's like, are you fucking kidding me? He said, these people got balls on them. I'm like, yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, but we're both Puerto Rican. That don't mean nothing. That doesn't mean you're going to capitalize on what I can do. Like, it just doesn't work that way. You know, if you want to learn, I told him, hey, if you want to take a class, I give Zoom classes and they're free. Anybody is allowed to audit them, come watch. I've had a lot of guys that, you know, people who've been training for a lot of years actually just, they don't understand the idea of the camera on them, but they'll watch the class and, you know, write a nice little comment to me. Hey, thanks, you know, for letting me watch and give me their idea or their take on it. But I let anyone watch. Anyone's allowed to learn and come in and train if you have experience or not. So I tell him, hey, if you want to come take the class, I invite him literally every night. I said,
wait a minute. Whoa, you teach Zoom classes for free?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Nice. That's what a way to give back. What's your motivation? What's the provocation for that?
Giving back.
Nice.
Martial arts has done
Nice.
so much for me. I can't even
Okay.
put into words. Like I mentioned really quickly, I had cancer in 2018.
Oh, wow.
I had to think
Yeah,
about it.
you
for a
said you
second.
didn't even know you had cancer, right? You had cancer, you didn't know?
Yeah, it was a funny story because I've been on a few like really fitness journeys. Like, hey, I'm gonna work out, but weights, right? And it even started. I was telling my fiance when I was a kid. My brother used to lift weights. My brother was like this guy I wanted. My brother has a black belt in Taekwondo, and I wanted to be like my brother so bad when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And he used to lift weights. So when he would leave the house, I'd pick up his weights and try to be like him. My mother's like, I know that's gonna stunt your growth. I know you're gonna be a midget. I know you're not gonna grow. So every time she would always put something into my head. Like she makes me believe that taking pre-workout has gave me cancer. She makes me believe I suffer from DVTs. I got them in 2014. She believes that karate gave me blood clots and it's gonna kill me. Like she's never been to any of my tournaments, any of my events. There was one time she came to a tournament with my dad and I had already finished competing. I'm like, yeah, I'm done. I took second in kata and I took first in breaking. Thanks for showing up. You know what I mean? Like whatever. She came to one event. I had taught an event. It was like my farewell event. It was right before I started my second round of chemo because I didn't know if I was gonna live. So I did a seminar. I had people come from California, all over the place. And it was nice to have my mom there. Some people said some really nice things to her, like, you know, that have impacted them, whatever. But yeah, I went on this really hard fitness journey in 2017. So for 2017, 2018, I got like super lean. I'm talking like people thought I was competing in bodybuilding. I was so lean.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, yeah, it's all my fitness shit that I'm losing all this weight, right? Because I could work out for hours and sometimes I have a hard time with weight or whatever it is. And I'm trying to figure out what's going on. But I lost all this weight. I'm thinking I'm the man, right? So my aunt tells my mom, because my family has a big history of cancer. She's like, Kevin looks sick. But doesn't tell me this till later. My aunt said, you should get him checked out. And that January, I had a physical. Came back fine. So one night, I come home. I go to the gym, deadlifted. I went to work, gym. Then I went to my mom's house, get that free mom cooking. Then I went home, right? And I remember I had plans that week too. I had like a date set up that weekend. I had all kinds of shit I was supposed to do. A seminar, everything. So I'm like, I wake up and I had this pain in my groin. It felt like someone slammed the car door on the boys. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm in my bed crying. I was like, oh shit. Oh, like my stomach, I feel like I was gonna throw up. And I'm like, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna get out of here? I get a lift. The lift almost left me. That's how long it took me to get downstairs from. It took me like minutes, literally forever, to get from my room to the front door to the elevator. And the elevator was literally like right down the hallway. So I get in the car. Long story short, we get there, and I'm in so much pain. They're giving me oxy, morphine, and I'm in so much pain. And they do an ultrasound. They do blood work and ultrasound and CAT scan. So I was working at the same branch of hospitals, but a different location at the time. So I had my badge, so they saw me quick. And the tech sees it and goes, he makes a face and goes, oh shit. And I said, nah, you can't make that face and say that thing without telling me what's going on. He's like, damn, puppy, I don't know how to tell you this. He said, yo, that's a tumor. I said, what? He said, you you got a tumor right there, bro, on your nutsack. And I was like, whoa, a what?
Oh,
He's like, you got cancer. And this is a tech. I'm like, why would you say this to me? He's like, well, it could probably benign, but it's there.
damn.
And I'm like, this dude's fucking kidding me. So I come back, right? And the doctors are like, oh, we don't know if it is. We found something, but it could be a cyst or a mass. And I'm like, I don't know. The tech said it was a tumor. And they looked at me like, the tech shit is not supposed to be saying anything. But he was like, I've been doing this for over 30 years, bro. I'm telling you, that's a tumor. Long story, they come back with my blood work. And they're like, okay, so tumor markers for people are usually like in the negatives. Yours is like 3,000. I said, what? They're like, you have a very aggressive tumor. You have cancer. I was like, I have what? And they were like, cancer. We can't tell you the exact staging, but it's extremely aggressive. And during the scan, it had already started moving into my kidneys and the lymph nodes in my back. So I was already on a blood thinner from the DVTs. They had me in the hospital for a week before they can operate. Because they said that if we operate now, you will literally die on the table. You will bleed to death. So I was in so much pain for a week before they could remove it. They remove it. I go home. They give me this option. I was supposed to have a surgery. From here to here, they wanted to cut me up, move all my organs, take out all my lymph nodes, put everything back. They told me it would take about 9 to 10 months to heal, and they will give me chemo. But here's the kicker, guys. They said, you will never be able to have sex again. I said, what?
Wait, what?
I said, yeah, that's not happening, bro.
Hold on.
I was like 35 at the time. I'm like, yeah, man, I need loving in my life. That's not happening. Even though I was single at the time, I'm like, yeah, no. So
Kendrick, you imagine someone told you that?
yeah, I was like, what
that, Kendrick?
That was crazy. I'm like,
Kendrick.
what? They're like, the nerves, it just won't work anymore. So I end up going to DMV, renew my license. I throw up blood at the DMV. Go back to the DMV. My mom rushes to the hospital, right? And they're like, the cancer moved to your stomach and your liver. We need to do chemo now. We can't wait. So it's funny, that whole time in the hospital, I did kata. Every day till I couldn't physically do kata anymore. Then I did it in my bed until I physically couldn't do that anymore. I did 2 kata, Tensho and Sanchin every single day. And that's why I say, like, I want to give this back to somebody.
Okay.
Because what if somebody else is in the situation? How can they occupy their mind? Because, you're there, you're alone, you're thinking a million miles a minute, what's going to happen to me next? Yeah. And the one thing that kept me grounded during that time was that, And the funniest thing is the people who visited me the most in the hospital were martial artists.
I knew you were going to say that.
There were people that I had never met in person, that were Facebook friends of mine for a couple of years. They came from Massachusetts. I had a guy come from Rhode Island, Connecticut, Pennsylvania. I had a guy flying from Florida just to see me in the hospital.
Wow.
I was like, what? I'd be sitting there and I'm sitting there laying there and I'm on my phone and this guy walking, oh, Shimba. And I'm like, oh shit, that's this dude from Facebook. And some people I'm like, yo, what the hell? I would be like, what's his name again? Like in my head, because I had so many Facebook friends. But it was so cool that they came. Like I had guys sending me postcards from their dojos. They would have all their students sign. Yeah. That was the thing. So it made me think, I'm like, fuck, not to shit on my family on this interview, but those are the people that came to see me. Like, I mean, they were cousins who never came. And they lived in Massachusetts. Cousins, relatives, friends, but the people who came to see me were my students and other martial artists, other senseis. And they were there like all the time.
Sure. Okay. Man. Martial artists to the bone. Jeez. Yep. You said doing kata. You said you were doing katas. Man, what a
kata every day. There's video too. I have video on Instagram of me doing it with a chemo coming out my hands. Sure, and I had a guy writing me. He's like, dude, I thought I was a bad motherfucker until I saw you doing kata with chemo in your arms. Like, goddamn. That's crazy.
Let's remember that, man. Whenever we feel like we can't work out, remember Kevin doing kata with chemo in his arm in bed.
Yeah,
that's pretty
absolutely.
impressive.
Yeah, what a man! That really fortifies how much of it's a blessing and a privilege to be able to have conversation with you and have this interview, man.
Thank you.
You just
appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. And just, again, sharing some of your story with us. Quick question for you: on your ring finger, is that a kunai or shuriken?
No,
Tattoo.
it's a promise ring.
No, underneath it, on the top part. That on that right there. Is that a shoulder
this.
or a kunai? Oh,
Yeah,
anchor. Okay.
That's a kunai.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, it is a kunai. Okay.
A
Okay.
kunai is a field knife for ninjutsu.
Okay.
Basically, yeah, the ninja, there's a ring, and you kind of
Sure.
use it. You can actually, it's funny because Scorpion uses it in Mortal Kombat.
Right. Mortal Kombat. Yeah.
Kusuri kunai, they call that. But a kunai is used similar to a karambit. So you spin it, and you can like stab dudes with it. And then you use the ring, and you can knock someone in the face. It's a pretty cool weapon. And also, it can help you climb trees. That's the other theory. But for me, it's more the combative. And I'm not trying to climb no trees no time soon. I'm too old for that shit.
I heard you say you're not into martial arts movies as too much, but we're big martial arts movies fans. I don't know why I am. I just am. But what's your favorite martial arts movie if you have one? And yeah, could you share that with us?
The Perfect Weapon. I'm always gonna go back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the story behind it, the whole concept behind it. I just really love that movie and the beginning scene. That's what really got me as a kid. I was like, I never seen kata done that way. The American Kempo kata. It's funny because my teacher makes fun of it. He says it looks like they're having a seizure. I'm like, okay. But to me, I thought it was badass at the time. And then I got the power and all that. But honestly, there are some, what's the name of the show? There's a show, I think it's called Woo Warriors or something like that on Netflix.
Netflix, yeah.
That the guy has like some kind of power within him. And he's like, that's badass. Like he's an Indonesian guy. Him I like. I like his movies. He had a movie called, I think it was called Triad or something like that. Also super badass. I can't think of his name, but he's in a Snake Eyes movie. But he's an Indonesian fella. And he's super nasty. His stuff I like. But the thing is with me is when I see these martial arts movies, I find holes in them. I'm like, that wouldn't really work that way. Like, I don't know if I want to do like a jumping flying armbar in the street. Like, I do it myself. How these people kind of nitpick our videos, I kind of do it myself with a movie.
Right.
And then my brother's like, dude, it's a movie. Shut up. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, you gotta kind of I can't think of the way to word it. Dispel disbelief, or you have to,
for a second.
Just kind of,
It's funny because I'm a superhero fan. I'll watch The Flash and Superman all day.
Okay.
But when I see this, I'm like,
Kevin, I just recently took the Batman cowl off of my training, Bob. He had a full Batman cowl cover.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, man. Yep. I had to change his attire, something different.
Yeah, I'm a big Superman guy. I got Superman on the ring, on the little finger here.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah, I see it. Okay.
Nice.
We that's kind of ironic. We got a Superman with Superman tattoo. You know what I'm saying? So
I appreciate
works.
that.
You know what I'm saying? You're welcome. Appreciate you. We do words of wisdom, but just the wisdom and just you, by the grace of God, beating cancer and utilizing martial arts and how it's blessed you even while you went through it and giving back. That kind of speaks for itself. But nonetheless, we want your words of wisdom. Share it with the people.
The one advice that I could give to anyone is stay humble always. It's very easy to get over our heads with ranks and belts and accomplishments and medals and achievements. But at the end of the day, we always got to remember, someone can humble us. We can never stop training enough. We can never stop learning enough. There's always someone faster, better, stronger. And the competition shouldn't be about with other people. It should really be about within. The person we look at in the mirror is our biggest competition every single day. We want to be better than ourselves the next day, the next day, the next day. And that's even what I do. Like I've been posting a lot of my workouts lately, really quickly. And I don't do it to show off. I do it so when I post my next video, I'm like, oh, I went up 20 pounds in bench press. So I went up whatever. That's why I do it. So I can judge myself. I'm looking at my own form, because when you're doing a heavy weight, you're like, yeah, my form probably looked like shit. Then you see the video and you're like, oh yeah, it was a little cleaner than I thought. I really moved that weight, or I really did this. So this technique, so I'm my biggest critic. Be your biggest critic, guys. Always reevaluate yourself. Always be open to criticism, the healthy criticism. Not that shit won't work. Someone will kill you in the street. More like, hey, if you turn your foot more out to the 45, when you go to kick that bag, you're going to cut through it more. Or, things like that. Pick up your back heel to get an extension on your reverse punch or your cross. Open to criticism and always be willing to learn.
Nice, beautiful, beautiful. Another
Nice.
thing, Kevin, give us that good old social media information, man. Give us your TikTok, give us your Facebook, give
Thank
us your Instagram, so we can stay connected. But also for the people who your interview, who it touches, they can get in contact, man. The Zoom classes, give it to me. What you got?
Thank you.
Speak it.
So on
welcome.
TikTok and Instagram, it's the same handle. It's my path, the number 2, greatness. So yeah, my path to greatness. On Facebook, it's my name, Kevin Pereira. Can't miss this mug. So it's just a picture of me, simple old me. And I post a lot of videos on there. So if someone is interested in the Zoom classes, you can either inbox me in any one of those forums and just say, hey, listen, I want to take a class. I have experience, I don't have experience, or I want to learn the Okinawan weapons. And we can get connected and get working.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, thank you. Well, you just put it all out there, so when they watch this, they'll get it, and we're also going to put the links in the description of the video. So, man, good stuff. Kevin, thank you so much for your time, brother. Thank you for sharing a little bit of your tremendous story with us, man. We really appreciate you. Honored to have you. Man.
Thank you so much. Likewise, sir. Thank you.
Kevin,
Can I get a picture really quickly? I want to get like a little screen grab. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I could post it on my, my socials. Here we go. Let me see. And here we go. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you doing this for me.
Thank you.
Hey, Kevin,
God bless you, brother.
I hope we can stay in touch, you and I, Kevin. We can talk more and stay in touch, man. You're
For sure,
cool dude.
Yes. All right. Have a good night, guys.
Good work.
I'll
You
see you.
too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate you.